Ken, every dad has that story that just you light up. Like when you talk about your kids is one of the first stories you want to tell. What is your favorite story about being a dad?
I guess there are a few, but let me preface my story by telling your listeners a little bit about me in order to get into this story. I'm a quadriplegic as a result of a spinal cord injury when I was 20 years old. So as a result, I'm almost totally paralyzed. And I became a dad much later in life. I was actually 54 when my children were born. And just to go a little bit more about that, I'm the father of triplet boys. I was present in the delivery room when they were born. So to tell you a story about one of my children by the name of Joey, when he was about 7 or 8, I went for a walk with him. I'm, of course, in my electric wheelchair. And we walked to the local Stop and Shop uh, in our town, about a mile away from our house. And while I was there in this crowded grocery store, I got very dizzy. I had problems with low blood pressure. And I became very dizzy and thought I was about to pass out. And here I am in a crowded store, just with my son Joseph, who's 7 or 8 years old. And Joey knew exactly what to do. He gave me a pill to raise my blood pressure, and then he lifted up my legs to keep them a little higher so they'd be more on the same level as my heart to help the blood pressure go up a bit. Now, here I'm in a crowded store. There are a lot of people crowding around, and Joey didn't panic at all. He knew exactly what to do to help me. He didn't ask anybody for help. And I felt totally secure being there with my son because I had confidence in him that he would know exactly what to do. And he did. And he got me through that episode. And I think about that a lot when I'm with my children.
Wow, what a story. A 7-year-old stepping up when his dad's body betrayed him in the middle of a store. Most of us would have panicked. I mean, let's be honest. Most kids would have frozen. But here, calm, trust, action. That's not just a proud dad moment, that's fatherhood on another level. And it's exactly the kind of perspective that Ken brings as a father of triplets that he had in his 50s while navigating the world as a quadriplegic. In this episode, we dive into fatherhood with no excuses and what it really takes to show up for your kids no matter what. And speaking of showing up better, let's take a moment to check in with our sponsors over at MyPillow. They're helping dads everywhere, every day, recharge so they can face the day stronger on a good night's sleep. We're going to take 1 minute check in with MyPillow, then we'll be back with Ken Kunken. Gentlemen, I sleep on my pillow. I sleep on MyPillow Giza sheets. I have MyPillow body pillows. I have MyPillow travel pillows. We have MyPillow towels. My wife even wears MyPillow slippers. I would never recommend a company that I don't use personally. We're proud to have Mike Lindell and MyPillow as sponsors of the show. You can go to mypillow.com and use code TFM. It's our parent company, The Fallible Man. Use code TFM for up to 80% off your order and free shipping over $75 for all of our listeners. MyPillow is a proud American company that is owned by its employees. And with every purchase, you help keep this podcast on the air. So thanks in advance for that. Get yourself a good night's sleep, support an American company, and help keep us going so we can make more episodes like this. Now, let's dive back into the show. Welcome to the Dad Hat Shenanigans Podcast, the unfiltered truth about being a dad. Real dads, real stories, unfiltered, candid conversations on fatherhood. I'm your host, Brent Dallin, and today my special guest is Kenneth Kunken. Ken, welcome to the Dad Hat Shenanigans Podcast.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me as your guest.
Oh, I'm excited. Ken, I actually am a little bit familiar with who you are. Some people don't know I'm also a podcast producer. I work on other shows. And so I actually had the benefit of knowing who you were because I've edited a show that you were on before. So when you guys contacted me, it was like, this is going to be so much fun because I already knew a lot about your backstory. So I'm excited.
Great.
Now, Ken, you're wearing a hat. Does that say Cornell?
Yes, it does.
Okay, I got it. I got to hear the story. What's the dad hat?
Okay, well, One of my sons, the son Joey that I mentioned before, is now about to start his junior year at Cornell. But when he began his freshman year 2 years ago, during orientation, he was given this hat as part of his orientation, Cornell, which is obviously very meaningful for me. One, because my son goes there, but also because I went to Cornell. I received my undergraduate degree there, as well as a master's degree there. And in addition, that's unfortunately where I had my spinal cord injury when I was a junior there. So Cornell University has been very instrumental in my life. And 50 years after I graduated from Cornell, my son Joseph entered his freshman year there.
Oh, that's amazing. Legacy and the history with it. And now to see your son go there, that is very cool.
In addition, I'm now on the Cornell University Council. And when I went up there for our first meeting, I got very cold. And the first hat that I put on to keep me warm is this Cornell hat. That was my son's hat.
Awesome. That is very cool. See, dads have these great stories that people just don't even like. It's so much of a part of who we are sometimes that people don't even realize. Obviously, I don't run around in a bowler hat all the time, mainly because I'm afraid of messing it up. But I have my ball caps, and I have caps that I've had for years, and every single one of them has this like story behind it. But my favorite ones have to do with my kids. So I love it, and that's just cool to see the legacy that you created. Right, you were there, and now your son's there. Ken, you said you have 3 boys.
I have triplet sons. So Joseph is starting his junior year at Cornell.
Mm-hmm.
My son James is starting his junior year at the State University of New York at Morrisville. And my son Timothy is beginning his junior year at Syracuse University. So all three are in upstate New York. All three colleges are not that far from each other. So they visit each other in school. They talk on the phone all the time. They've gone to classes with each other. And it's great that they've just remained so close.
That's awesome. Now, Ken, you started to introduce yourself a little bit. Fill us in just for everybody listening. Who is Ken Kunken? Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do, and let's catch up before we move into this.
Okay, well, maybe I'd start even before my injury. I'd like to go all the way back to when I was born. I was born in 1950, and Brent, I don't think you know this story, but I was born during the polio epidemic. And unfortunately, right after I was born, my mother contracted polio, and she died when I was less than a month old. So as a result, my relationship with my dad was probably even stronger than most people's because I grew up initially with, out of mother figure to be around. We spent a lot of time with my grandparents, but obviously my father was so instrumental in every aspect of my life. He remarried when I was 4, but unfortunately, it was not a very happy marriage. And they divorced when I was 13 or 14 years old. And then we lived just in an apartment with my father until I went off to college. At that point, he married for the third time. So I spent a lot of time alone, either with my father or with my father and older brother, who's 2 years older than me. So we had a particularly close relationship.
That's a good foundation.
Um, yeah. But to take it a little further, when I was growing up, my father was the person who taught me how to throw and hit a baseball. We were all became very active in athletics thanks to my father. That was a very important part of our life growing up. My brother, myself, learned how to do these things from my father. So when I went off to Cornell, I played on their lightweight football team. And unfortunately, when I was 20 during my junior year, I had a spinal cord injury making a tackle on a kickoff. And as a result, I'm almost totally paralyzed from the shoulders down. And now that I'm a father, I cannot begin to imagine how difficult that must have been for my father when I was injured, because the thought of anything happening to any one of my boys would just be devastating.
I can't. Yeah, no. I talk about hitting the weak spot. Like you can do anything you want to me. My children hurt. There's blood in the water. I can be a really nice guy. I turn really mean if my kids are not well for any reason. So
Absolutely. I'm fortunate. All three of my boys, I have triplet boys, have been very healthy their whole life. And while they've all had bumps and bruises, as all children do, I've been very fortunate that they're in very good health.
can I ask what part of your spine did you injure?
I broke my neck at the C4-5 level, which is very high up in the neck. Um, Most people, at least back then when I was injured in 1970, didn't survive an injury like that. In fact, the doctor had told my family I probably wouldn't live through the week. And now here I am almost 55 years later. I believe that doctor has long since died, but I'm still here.
Wow, that's man. God smiled on you. Like
He sure did.
neck injuries are so complex and terrifying. I fractured my C5 back at the beginning
Oh,
of 20, and God smiled on me. The doctors could not explain why I can walk,
mm,
but it was I still like
mm.
have PTD. And I hate to even use the term. I have PTSD flashbacks every time my neck pops. Like
Right.
I'll sit with my head up too long or something, and my neck will pop. And for a few seconds, there's this like utter panic because I'm just afraid that. So God smiled on me big, but it is so tricky. The neck is so complex.
Yes.
The fact that you are very capable as far as mentally and have a positive outlook on things. I mean, it could be a lot different.
Well, see, I was very fortunate, Brett, that I had a lot of family support. Now, obviously, my father was one of those people, but I'm talking about support from grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and that made all the difference in my life. And thanks to them and their help, I was able to go back to college after I completed my hospital stay and rehabilitation. And that's how I was able to go back to Cornell, complete my undergraduate degree where I was studying industrial engineering, and then remained there for a master's degree where I got a master's degree in education, where I majored in counseling and student personnel administration. And I went to work for a couple of years as a vocational rehabilitation counselor. But as much as I enjoyed it, I decided what I really wanted to do was become a lawyer. So I left that job, went to law school, and was fortunate after law school to be hired as an assistant district attorney, where I worked for more than 40 years.
Wow, that's incredible. And man, I know so many people who make excuses about why they can't do this or that, and then you find someone who says I can do this and that, and it makes all the difference in the world.
It sure does.
And you waited till you were 54 to have kids.
You know, after my injury, I was injured when I was 20. I never thought or even dreamed about ever being married or even the possibility of getting married, let alone becoming a father. That was the furthest thing from my mind. But as years went on, one of my aunts encouraged me, my Aunt Betty, not to rule that out, to meet a woman, fall in love, and eventually get married. And I was very fortunate to have met an incredible woman named Anna. She's sitting just to my right off screen now, uh, and fell in love. And Anna and I got married in 2003. 2000, she just alerted me 2003 to make sure I remembered. Uh, and when we talked about getting married, Anna indicated that she wanted to have my baby, and not just a baby, my baby. She said she wanted to see a little Kunken running around our home. Now, this really seemed impossible. At the time, I had been paralyzed for more than 30 years, and I was already in my 50s. Um, there was a saying in the military that I've always liked. I never served in the military, but I heard this statement: the difficult we do at once, the impossible takes a little longer. Well, we were determined to make the impossible happen, and we wanted to do it sooner rather than later. So we pursued in vitro fertilization, and God was surely smiling on us because my wife became pregnant, and I was present in the delivery room on January 24th, 2005, when Anna gave birth to triplet sons, Joey, Jimmy, and Timmy. And I could not be a happier or more proud dad than I am of my three sons.
That's awesome. And so I've got to ask, right? Because everybody, the minute they find out you're going to be a dad, offers all kinds of advice. What was the best piece of advice you were given about being a dad?
Basically, just be there for them, be supportive, be able to listen to them and help them in any way you can by just being present. And, for me, it was a really um, scary experience because growing up, my father was active in helping us athletically, taking us out, having a catch, right? Throwing a ball around, going to ball games. And here I knew I could not do that with my children. So I was really hesitant about ever becoming a dad because I felt bad that I wouldn't be able to do those things with my child or children, as it turned out. Uh, and I was fortunate that people encouraged me I could help out in other ways other than physically. One, I could provide financially, which I've been able to do thanks to my job. That I could be there for support, that I could be there for encouragement, and hopefully, with what I've done with my life, to help motivate and inspire them to grow up to be the best they can be. So it was good advice. I'm glad I took it, and I'm as proud a dad as anybody could be.
That's awesome. Now, Ken, you faced fatherhood a later in life. You had triplets. That idea, like we were harassed because there are twins on both sides of my wife and I's families, like and so like everybody was like, "Oh, you guys will probably get twins." Terrified me. Absolutely. The concept terrified me. You became a father late in life and you had triplets.
Right. Well, my sister has identical twins as well as a boy that's older, and going through in vitro is not an easy process. It was very difficult for us, and I thought, wouldn't both my wife and I, we each have two siblings, and I thought, wouldn't it be great if we had twins and we didn't have to go through this process again? So I was real excited. I went with her for each of her sonograms, and I was really hoping for twins. And I remember going for that first sonogram and seeing the doctor, move this instrument around and seeing not just one embryo, but then seeing another one. And I am just so excited. And suddenly he moves it, and there's a third. And I was just astounded because I had never even seen triplets before. I couldn't even imagine what it would be like to have triplets and be the father of triplets. So we were just triply blessed. And I couldn't be more happy and thankful that we were able to raise three sons.
That's man, I was terrified of the idea of possibly twins, so hats off alone right there. I'm sure you have a whole lot of dad stories just from the fact that you have triplets. But what is
Well, just to give you a story,
yeah.
uh, growing up, I can't feed myself, so my wife needs to feed me as well. And I remember when the boys were real small, they were in high chairs around the table. And initially we had a nanny helping out, but we didn't have a nanny on weekends, most weekends. And we'd sit around the table, and my wife would give Joey a bite of food, then Jimmy a bite of food, then Timmy a bite of food, then Daddy a bite of food, then Mommy would take a bite of food. And that's how we ate some of our meals. So it was quite a show just watching feeding time and fitting 3 car seats in the back of a minivan that would still leave enough room for me to get in my wheelchair was a real challenge as well, finding the right car seats that we could do that in and the right minivan. So it seemed like each thing that we were doing was a challenge. Getting a stroller, a triplet stroller that could fit 3 babies in. I mean, everything became such a challenge. And everywhere I went, people would come up, marvel at the boys, and turn to me and go, "You must be such a proud grandfather." Everybody just assumed I was their grandfather because I was so much older. So, oh well, what can you do? Yes, I was very proud, but I am their father.
Oh, wow. My wife got teased because she was so much older than her baby brother that she frequently got mistaken as his mother when she'd be
Mhm.
carrying her to a store or something. She
I,
absolutely hated.
mm.
It's amazing how an age gap affects people's perception of a situation. So you had your hands full for any dad.
We sure did and still do. Now they're at 3 separate colleges. But yes. So, but it's been such a wonderful challenge. I mean, it's just changed our whole life. And in fact, we recently took a road trip all the way out to Montana with our boys to go to one of my nephew's weddings. And while we went in 2 separate cars because we couldn't actually all fit with all our luggage to be away for a month, um, we did a road trip with our boys and did a lot of sightseeing with them. And it was just great. Absolutely great.
Ken, in your unique situation, not only an older dad, a differently able dad, a triplet dad, there are a lot of young dads out there who are finding out they're going to be fathers for the first time. They're dealing with fatherhood for the first time, that have all kinds of things just racing through their head. Will you share some of the things you've learned about being a dad with us?
Well, first of all, I would say it was very scary. From day one, before my wife even gave birth, it was scary. But you learn a lot by doing and going along. And I think one of the most important things is the patience. Just being patient, just being there. Be ready and willing to listen, to help out in any way that you can, but just being there to hopefully help guide your children to grow up with the right values, the right character, to love not only each other, but know that it's important that they help each other and that they help other less fortunate people whenever they have the opportunity. And in addition, to be very supportive with your wife. I think it's so important for your children to see that you respect and love your wife and that you're on the same page with everything as a parent, right? That they don't need to go to one parent, get a certain direction of thing to do, and then go to another parent and be told something differently. It's so important to be on the same page as your wife.
So, can I ask, were your sons active in sports?
They didn't want to play any team sports, but they're all into martial arts.
Yeah.
So all 3 are martial artists. In fact, all 3 of them are second-degree black belts in the martial art taekwondo, and they've also studied Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So, we used to take them for different activities. We, had them do intramural wrestling and intramural basketball, and we brought them for archery and bowling and roller skating, and we tried to expose them to as many different athletic activities as we could. But the one thing that stuck with them was the martial arts. So that's how they grew up. One of my sons played on his high school bowling team. It was a terrific bowler, but it's the martial arts that really stuck, and they still continue to do that when they're home from school.
Taekwondo and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. Are we looking to expect any future UFC fights from your sons?
No, fortunately, they've also served as instructors at the facility for Taekwondo. But no, they just appreciate what goes on in it, the respect that is involved in it, the discipline, and the camaraderie too with the people that they train with, as well as the people that they've instructed. It's a wonderful, wonderful activity.
Yeah, there's a huge amount. I, I'm I'm actually really excited because I'm seeing more people getting their kids into the martial arts, and I think the discipline that is capable there to learn is so important and missing a lot of times.
Well, I would say the best things that we did for our boys when they were growing up is first swimming lessons to make sure they all could swim. And secondly, the martial arts and the training that they've gone through, the discipline that it encourages, the self respect, the uh, goals that they strive to achieve to get to the next higher belt, and to just constantly improve. And what's great is all three boys do it, but they're not competitive with each other. They cheer each other on. There's no sibling rivalry. They're each other's biggest fans, and I love seeing that.
That's very cool. Do they get to compete for the same dojo when they were coming up?
Yes, yes, they do, and they competed against other dojos, and it's great to see and to watch and to see how they've progressed, but also to see how, excuse me, some of the younger students there look up to them because our boys have also been instructors there.
Very cool. Very cool. Do you have a dad joke for us?
No, actually, I don't. Not one particular joke comes to mind. And as I say, most people think of me as their grandfather. When I've gone to school activities with them, everybody thinks I'm their grandfather. But it's the greatest thing in the world to just be with my boys and watch them growing up. And what used to happen too was while I was working as a lawyer, um, they would come in the afternoon when my wife would pick them up from school or nursery school and then bring them to get me. So they had to be, you know, with us at an early age, and they'd see me in the office right before I'd finish my work and get things done. And, initially, at least one of them wanted to be a lawyer. Now, none of them are pursuing that.
I was
One
gonna.
is studying mechanical engineering, one is studying renewable energy, and one is studying journalism. So I was a little surprised that even after seeing me in my office, none of them wanted to be a lawyer. But it's great that they pick three different fields to pursue.
Well, that's the great part about kids, right? They're a little bit of you, a little bit of your wife, and then a whole lot of them in between, and that y'all just kind of color it as they go. I've been excited
Right.
watching my 11 and 13-year-old kind of branch into their own. I see things like, yeah, that's my wife, Sarah. No, no, that's definitely me. And then they get off on stuff. I'm like, yep, they didn't get that from either of us. That's entirely them.
Well, for me, it was incredible that they grew up sleeping in the same bedroom, doing all the same activities, going to the same, elementary school, junior, middle school, high school, and they decided to go to three separate colleges without us encouraging them one way or the other, pursuing three different majors. It just constantly astounds me how that happens. And they're doing great.
Ken, what is the best advice you would give to a new dad? You shared quite a bit as far as like being patient, What is that gold nugget if you had one shot that you would share with a new expecting dad?
Spending as much quality time with your children as you can, right? I mean, patience is part of it, but part of it is being involved in what they want to do, in their interests, and encouraging them to pursue it, and just being there for them. Um, Unfortunately, when there was this pandemic going around with COVID, it was terrible for everybody to have to go through that. But for us, our three boys were home with us. They at least had playmates. They always had each other around, so they were not alone. And it got us to spend even more time with them. And, you know, during these road trips, we've gone on a number of road trips with them. We've gone, down to Florida with them, to Washington, D.C., to obviously this time to Montana. Spending that type of quality time with them is one the best thing in the world to do for them, but also for you. It's just the quality time that I know they'll remember for the rest of their lives because of spending this time with us and with each other together.
It's interesting. You bring up a very,
Mm.
I feel like it's being overlooked with a lot of younger families these days. So I grew up, all the vacations we took, we jumped in the Suburban and we drove. I remember driving across the country more, like so many times in my youth growing up, because that's the way we did on vacations. There were 5 or 6 of us, and we jumped in the vehicle and we drove 12 hours, 14 hours one direction, and then another 10 hours the next day or whatever. I don't see that as often with a lot of young families. We're very digital these days. We have a lot of technology. You see a lot of kids on tablets. Do you feel like that made a huge difference in connecting with your kids?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to me, it's wonderful. Now they're 20 years old. They still enjoy spending time with us as well as with their brothers and doing things together. And I think that makes so much of a difference. Um, you know, they're very proud of the fact that they're triplets. They're proud of the fact that they have a mother who's from Poland, an immigrant. She's a US citizen, but they're very proud of the fact of their Polish heritage. They're proud of the fact that their father's a quadriplegic and what I've done with my life. They are wonderful dealing with other individuals who have disabilities. They grew up not just around me, but I would bring them to where I used to work as a rehabilitation counselor. So they're very used to being with people with different types of abilities and disabilities. And they're very comfortable with everyone that they meet. I might add that my wife is Catholic and I am Jewish. So my boys grew up respecting two different religions and observing the holidays for both religions. So, they've grown up with this wealth of a background that is so diverse and different than most people. And I think that's helped them a lot in their maturity and helped them in dealing with others. And I think, it brings me back to when I hear people talking about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And for some reason, some people have a negative opinion of that. I don't fully understand that. I feel that so many people have benefited by diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think my children are perfect examples of that, how they've benefited by having a father and a mother who bring such different backgrounds into their life and such different experiences, having a father who's a quadriplegic, a mother who was an immigrant, the different religions, the different interests. Um, I've written a book about my life called I Dream of Things That Never Were, the Ken Kunken story. And it was great because my boys got to read it and learn more about me than I shared with them as they were growing up. And they learned not only things about me, but about how active and involved our family was in helping me all these years. And I think that's helped them become more loving and more appreciative of the large extended family that we have. And I believe family is so important to everyone. Um, so I think it's really significant.
I think people bristle with the idea of DEI because the concept of it has been bastardized. It's taken us from judging a person based on their character, the content of their character, to based on a single ratio. We go, oh, they're Jewish, or oh, she's a woman, or oh, he's a black man. And we take away the context of their character, or their abilities, or their skills, and say, no, you're. I think that's why it's become such a negative opinion. I live in a
You
highly
know, Brett,
Hispanic community,
yeah, if
and
I may
yeah,
respond to that. At the DA's office, when you'd leave your job, we'd go through what they call an exit interview,
hmm
where you tell the personnel director what you liked best about the job and what you thought could be improved about the job.
hmm
And I was told on a number of occasions by the person doing those interviews that a number of the assistant district attorneys have said the best part of their job was meeting, working with, and getting to know me. Now, I don't say that to boast or brag, Brent. I'm saying that because what they were referring to is meeting, working with on a daily basis somebody who is a quadriplegic, somebody with a significant disability. Because unless they had a close relative with a disability, most people never come in daily contact with someone with a disability. And they seem to have felt that it inspired and motivated them to be better workers, work harder, and be better people because they had the opportunity to be exposed to somebody they wouldn't normally be exposed to. I also received award from the Court Officers Association, where I worked as the outstanding assistant district attorney one year. And the reason why I was given that award from the court officers, I believe, was because of the effect my work in the courts with them had a positive effect on them and other court personnel, because these are people that weren't even in the district attorney's office. So I believe what people don't appreciate enough is that DEI doesn't just help any one individual person, it helps everybody that comes in contact with that person, whether it be through schooling or whether it be on the work site or just in recreation. It makes a big, big difference when people are exposed to people that may be different than them. And everybody learns a lot by that. And that's a very positive thing.
and I wouldn't disagree with you. Like I said, I think it's when we stop and go, we're filling a quota because we have to have this. You were a qualified, capable lawyer who earned your degree. You were qualified for the job, right? And the differences in you as an individual brought value as well. But it wasn't, we're going to hire you only because of this, and you're not actually qualified for the job. And I think that's
No,
what.
I might add, Brent, that I was promoted a number of times in my job as an assistant district attorney,
Mhm.
where I eventually became one of the deputy bureau chiefs. And I was in a position where I was helping supervise more than 25 other assistant district attorneys. But if I may go back before I went to law school, when I was looking for my first job as a vocational rehabilitation counselor, I had already gotten two master's degrees, one from Cornell, one from Columbia. So here I had an undergraduate degree from Cornell, a master's degree from Cornell, a master's degree from Columbia, three prestigious Ivy League degrees, two master's degrees, and no one would hire me. I looked for a job for a year in the 1970s, in the mid 1970s. And back then, everyone seemed to feel I was just too disabled to work, despite the fact that all I had accomplished in my educational background. Now, I might add that once I was hired, they gave me an award too while I was working there. And in fact, when I finally left the job to go to law school, they not only hired a full time counselor to replace me, they had to divide additional duties I was doing between two other employees. And I think that just goes to show that when you are more receptive to giving individuals a chance who may be a little different than you, everybody benefits. And I'm not saying hire somebody who's not qualified for the job. I'm saying take a serious look at that individual's qualifications. And because they may do a job a little differently than you're accustomed to having it done, doesn't mean they're not going to do it just as well, if not better, than somebody does it.
And I would agree with you 100%. Like I said, I think that is where it sours, is when people hire certain individuals to fill a quota instead of, are these people actually qualified to do this job? I've never worked with anybody in a job that was qualified to do the job that didn't bring even more than that to the job. Right? It's when we start saying this is the only thing that matters, as opposed to, are you qualified to do this? And I think that's why it's left a bad taste in people's mouth, is when they bastardize the term. Right? It's not about who's the best qualified anymore. It's about filling quotas. And I think that's where it gets the bad spin.
Right. I've never advocated hiring somebody who's not qualified or admitting somebody to a certain college who's not qualified to be there. I'm suggesting you look at everything involved in that person's background and qualifications and then make a determination.
Oh, I agree 100%. Now, Ken, if people want to connect with you deeper, where's the best place to connect with you?
They can go to my website, which is kenkunken.com. Uh, and I think they could learn a lot more about me than we've covered. They could learn where they could purchase my book if they're interested. My book is out not only a hardcover, but in a Kindle version, as well as an audio version. And I might add that for the audio version, one of my sons, Timothy, actually did the recording. We went into one of our large closets, set it up as like a little recording studio, and he actually controlled the recording. I narrated it, he did the recording for it.
That's awesome. That you got to work on it together. That's
Right?
those are memories that last for a lifetime as well. It's when you get to collaborate with your kids on things.
Absolutely. It's the best.
Ken, if our listeners got nothing else out of the conversation, and there's a lot here to unpack, what is the most important thing you want them to hear today?
To treat everybody as people, to give them all the proper respect that everybody deserves in life. Whether they have the same views and feelings and religion and background as you have, or somebody who's very different. Learn to respect everybody you come in contact with. Have the patience to deal with somebody who may need a little more time to verbalize who they are and what they do and what they want in life. And don't rule out the possibility that somebody who may have a disability could not become a good husband, father, family member who just may be different than you and do things a little differently. And I think my children have benefited by the fact that they've grown up in a household where, they have parents that are so uniquely different than other parents that they've been exposed to. I think that's helped them become better people. And it certainly improved my life. To become a father, it's changed every day of my life. How I wake up in the morning and look at the world. It's made me a better person.
I love it. You have this great background with a father who is engaged, who is active in your life, who is there for you, and played such a huge role. And now you've gotten to do that for your sons and been a father to them and help them get started on their lives. Are they dating anybody? Are there grandkids in the future?
Right now, none of my three has a serious girlfriend, but is it in the future? I expect it is. I'm looking forward to it. I grew up being particularly close with my grandparents. And when you think of a dad as somebody you look to for inspiration, I had grandfathers that I looked to for inspiration and motivation. And I trust that, my kids will not only look at that, but someday, hopefully, their kids will look forward to spending time with their grandparents.
Ken, thank you for being on the show today and hanging out with us. Guys, thanks for joining us today on the Dad Hat Shenanigans podcast, a community of dads just navigating life's challenges together. Until next time, laugh, learn, and live the dad life. Gents, if your relationships are not where you want them to be, I want you to know I got you. Relationships take a lot of work and can fall on the back burner pretty easily as you're empire building in your life. Men often suffer from damage to their relationships while they're trying to provide. I help men with the skills, techniques, and solutions to rebuild thriving relationships with the people that matter most in their life. Even if you've struggled with not being the husband or the father you wanted to be in the past, it's not too late. Reach out and schedule your free discovery call at purposedrivenmen.com to learn the skills you need to connect deeply with the people that matter most.